Steve Mason was born in Oklahoma City in 1959 to Ann and George Mason. His father was a local home builder. Both parents had a great influence on how he lives his life today.
My mom, has historically been very kind and very outgoing and very involved in her community, and that's a part of me. My dad worked hard. He was a good dad. I remember I was in Boy Scouts and we'd go camping and he would go on the campouts. And my dad wasn't much of a camper, but he'd go on the campouts and hang around with the other men and drink coffee. But he'd go on the campouts, which had an impact on me.
Steve liked school and was a good student. He graduated from Cassidy and went on to undergrad at Vanderbilt and graduate school at Stanford. He married his wife Kim in 1983 and worked in Utah building hazardous waste landfills that Steve says some people call dumps. A few years later, when he started his own company, he built one of the largest landfills in the country in Utah. But why did he name his company Cardinal Engineering?
My belief is a company shouldn't be me. It should be more than me. In Mason Engineering, it's me. Well, that wasn't my goal even back then, is I wanted to build something that was more than me, that was everybody's that worked at Cardinal. The Cardinal is the prettiest bird you see out your window in Oklahoma City. We're St. Louis Cardinal fans. The Pope has Cardinals. You have the Cardinal rule about how you should treat people with decency. And you have the Stanford Cardinal.
In addition to engineering, Steve has also been in the restaurant business for almost 2 decades, with his most popular venue being Earl's Rib Palace. Some would say Steve has his fingers in a lot of pies, but Steve describes it this way.
Sometimes I think I have very short attention spans because I do a lot of varied things. I spend a lot of time on nonprofit work, youth work, Cardinal Engineering work, the redevelopment of 9th and Broadway. We're now going over to the Plaza District to do some redevelopment. We went to 9th and Broadway originally because a friend of mine said, who's a realtor, Chip Keating, said, let's buy this building where Cardinal is at 1015 Broadway and flip it and make $100,000. We bought the building for $416,000. And $7 million later, we've redeveloped 10 buildings and we're still going.
When the Masons came back to Oklahoma in 1983, they worked on the Arts Festival, and their family has been involved in the arts since that time.
One of my most memorable times was in 1995, the year of the bombing. My job was to build the Arts Festival. So we built the Arts Festival through the bombing experience when the city was trying to decide how quickly we could resume normal operations as a city and how we should respond to horrible acts such as that. And while that debate was occurring for about 5 days, my job was to keep building the Arts Festival, which I kept building. And then ultimately, the Arts Festival was canceled. So that was a very memorable part of my life.
Being a scout at an early age laid the groundwork for encouraging his children to go through the scouting program. The Mason family has 2 Eagle Scouts and a Gold Award Scout, an important program, Steve says, to build character and have fun. The Masons believe in building character.
When our kids were in grade school and junior high, we used to solicit proposals from nonprofits for giving money to them. And then we'd have a committee structure which was us, and everyone would vote, and everyone had an equal vote. And it was a wonderfully great exercise. And that imagine saying to a 3rd grader, you can decide how to spend a chunk of money, and not a little chunk of money, a reasonable chunk of money. And I think, it's very important to say to our children, to our youth, or even to the fellow adults, we trust you. We trust your decision making, and we want you to practice your decision making. And that was a really great process for our children to be making decisions as 3rd graders and as 6th graders. And a 3rd grader makes a decision differently than an adult does.
Life lessons are learned in the defining moments of our lives. And Steve Mason has had many defining moments. This Renaissance, multifaceted man with a heart for his community, compassion for others, a desire to do the right thing for his family, his friends, his city, as well as his country, who deeply wants to leave this world a better place, is why Steve Mason is this year's recipient of the Oklahoma City University's Meinders School of Business Entrepreneurial Spirit Award.